Professor Wasim Jafri to talk about hepatitis B and C from discovery to eradication. He is Professor, Department of Gastroenterology at the Aga Khan University. Dr. Jafri is a very well-known hepatologist, gastroenterologist in Pakistan, and he has earned a great name in Pakistan and the region. He was awarded the highest merit award of Master of the American College of Gastroenterology in 2018. He had been the governor of the American College of Gastroenterology previously. He's received Lifetime Achievement Awards from the PSG in 2017 and from the Prime Minister of Pakistan in 2018. He had been Chair of Medicine and Head of Gastroenterology and Hepatology and is currently heading the Department for Continuing Professional Education along with his clinical and other responsibilities. With over 250 peer-reviewed publications in gastroenterology and hepatology, we are really honored that he has spared time to speak today. So please, you may take over and join us here on stage. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I would like to extend my thanks and gratitude to the organizers, especially Professor Aftab Mohsin, Professor Azizur Rahman, and Professor Javed Akram for inviting me to this wonderful conference, which is third annual conference of PSMI. The society has taken a major lead when it comes to holding conferences, and who is the backbone for medical services. It really are our wonderful colleagues who are part of internal medicine and really perform extraordinary work. I had my presentation on hepatitis B and C from discovery to elimination, but unfortunately that presentation is not opening on computers here, and I had in the same USB another one. So I thought, okay, let's start with it, and in between, when it comes to hepatitis C, either you can ask me or I can give you a brief comment about that. So let's start with general considerations of hepatitis B and, of course, C as we go along. There is a huge global burden of diseases, and if you look at the infectious diseases, as causes of death, they come to after cardiovascular conditions, 16.7 million. And when it comes to infectious diseases, almost 15 million. And then neoplastic injuries, and the data really is validated through WHO, and all the data is available for all of you to see. So about 15 million, more than 25% of 57 million annual deaths worldwide are estimated to be directly related to infectious diseases. This figure does not include the deaths that occur as a consequence of complications associated with chronic infections, such as liver failure, hepatocellular carcinoma in people infected with hepatitis B or C. Cirrhotic deaths, more than 783,000 deaths per year. Cancer-related to hepatitis B, C, as they are the predominant causes, more than 619,000. So one of every 40 deaths worldwide really comes from these sources. So look at the enormity of the problem that the world faces really related to hepatitis and its sequelae, resulting in the ultimate form, that is death. So let's start with some historical aspects. It was through the enormous work of Bloomberg in 1965 that we came to know what we call as hepatitis B virus today, and it wasn't known as a B virus to start with. Some of my senior colleagues sitting here, they would remember that we used to call the first blood test for something with hepatitis, and let's get an Australia antigen checked for these patients. Remember those good old days? Of course, and that really how it started, and I'll come to that historically as well. Feinstein and his fine work in 1973 really told us about the hepatitis A virus. Mario Rosetto, a wonderful colleague from Italy, in 1977, he became the pioneer for hepatitis D virus. And through the work of Professor Houghton in his lab, this was his, the senior registrar at that time too. But the paper appeared in Science where he was the first author, so it relates to him. And he's come from Singapore. He was working in California with Professor Houghton, and that's how, in fact, in 1989, we came to know about what we call as hepatitis C virus. And Professor Rice and his colleagues in 1990 were the architect for hepatitis C virus. So those are the 5 viruses that you guys are very familiar with. Here is this wonderful, wonderful gentleman, in fact, through enormous contribution in science in various fields. Of course, it's very interesting if you go and read his biography, in fact, that how wonderful his work was and what, other than hepatitis B, his contributions were. So Bush Bloomberg, and I had the rare opportunity of meeting him once through the ASSLD and Liver Foundation and all those things, and I was immensely, immensely impressed with him. He had immense curiosity and energy that were hallmarks of his scientific personality, described as a leading light in the scientific community and a great humanitarian as well. Bloomberg identified the hepatitis B virus and created the first vaccine to prevent the virus. The scientific findings are often surreptitious because look at what he was working on and how he got, in fact, this enormous contribution. Such was the case for Dr. Bloomberg, who discovered the hepatitis B virus. He did not set out to discover the cause of hepatitis B. As I said, there was, no hepatitis B then, it was hepatitis as such. Rather, his initial curiosity and understanding of the scientific process led him to his profound discovery. In brief, the story of hepatitis B started with a search for inherited differences and ended with the discovery of this new virus. So this is how, in fact, you can go on and on. It will consume a lot of time, but I will skip some of the written material here. But in fact, it was through his enormous contributions. He traveled with his team to the globe to collect blood samples from native populations in remote parts of the world. And that's how this Australia antigen got detected. The blood came from Aborigines, the Australian Aborigines. And it was when checked in patients who, in New York, who were suffering from hemophilia. And since they were getting blood, he thought that they would develop antibodies. So that blood got interacted with the Australia antigen, and that's how it was named as Australia antigen. So it's written here, reason the hemophiliacs who had received multiple blood transfusions would have been exposed to blood serum proteins that they themselves had not inherited but had been inherited by their donors. As a result of this exposure, the immune systems of the hemophiliacs patients would produce antibodies against the foreign blood serum proteins or antigens from the donor. Since antibodies are programmed to lock into specific antigens, Dr. Bloomberg decided to use antibodies from the hemophiliac patients to test the blood samples collected around the world. A series of research and clinical observations led to confirmation that the Australia antigen, later on when this was found out, then he in fact used this technology for those patients who were having hepatitis and thought, caused by hepatitis B virus, and this was discovered in 1967. 2 years later, he invented the vaccine too. There is a very interesting history for the hepatitis B vaccine. All of you know that the hepatitis B vaccine is the first anti-cancer vaccine because it can help prevent liver cancer. As liver cancer, really, majority of the patients globally are affected by hepatitis B virus. So this means that if you don't have hepatitis B, at least and through vaccination or whatever, you can do a wonderful job to yourself, to your partners, to your colleagues, and to all the patients that you see they do not have it. The first commercially available was in 1981 by approved a more sophisticated plasma-derived hepatitis B vaccine for human use. You know that this vaccine, again, that we were using in 80s and all that, were not really up to mark because it was coming from patients with hepatitis B, and in fact they had the antibodies and we would in fact screen and all that thing. But this really later on was picked up with the recombinant hepatitis B vaccine techniques. It's impossible to get hepatitis B from the recombinant vaccines that are currently approved. Extremely, extremely safe. So why we are after the elimination of hepatitis B and C viruses? Because the enormous numbers that are affected and the enormous contributions towards both morbidity and death coming from hepatitis B and C virus, about 2 billion of hepatitis B infections. And in fact, it all comes from the WHO and CDC fact sheets. And anybody doubting it can go back immediately or use your cell phones and go onto the sites, and you would have this correct data as it stands today. And this is the world map. Pakistan, according to the WHO, is in the eastern Mediterranean region, and it is in the intermediate zone from 2 to 8% with Libya, Oman, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and Tunisia. That's how the WHO, in fact, puts us into it. And this is the hepatitis B when it comes to the Pakistan itself. And you can see it can be less than 2% to more than 5% when you travel from Karachi to Khyber and different parts and see what happens in our own country. So we looked at, in fact, for a period of a few years, what is happening with the children across Karachi. And when I looked at around 3,533 between the ages of 1 and 15, I found that surface antigen positivity was 1.8%, and hepatitis C was also seen in about 1.6%. So both infections were common in this very, very, young age groups. So what has changed the global endemicity of hepatitis comes through the vaccination programs that have gone on globally, courtesy WHO and all the alliances that they have. So we looked at what is happening in our own country over a period of 2001 and 8 on a specimen which was 185,825. And we found from this, study on this enormous number of patients coming across because of so many collection centers of Aga Khan University, we found that yes, in fact, there is a changing scenario in our country too with vaccination. This study substantiated the general perception that levels of surface antigen is showing a slow decreasing trend, while surface antibody are increasing perhaps due to vaccination strategies. But still we need to work on it and work on it and work on it so that what success we have, we continue to stabilize it and improve on it. Ladies and gentlemen, can hepatitis B be cured as I stand today? No. Hepatitis B can be controlled because we do not have effective medicines to counter the surface antigen. So long you are surface antigen positive, you are hepatitis B positive, because your DNA in the blood does not reflect the CCC DNA which is present in your liver. And hence, once be, always be, unless you develop the surface antibody. And that is the best news you can have for your patients, yourself, or anybody that, after having seen surface antigenemia for X number of years, now it's gone, surface antibody has appeared, and you are, cured. The currently available medicine, certainly I'll come to that, as the antiviral treatment and universal vaccine and all that. Current treatments can induce viral suppression and sustain disease control, but as far as elimination, no. The treatment does not eliminate hepatitis B virus. Hence, we come to the elimination part, we'll know what we can do for at least B. So yes, treatment can decrease inflammation, it can decrease fibrosis, it can decrease the progression, yes. Reversal of fibrosis and decrease progression, yes. But decrease incidence, and of course, when you do all that, there is a decrease in incidence, but not elimination of HCC, which is liver cancer. The currently available treatment, the first line treatment, look at the dismal surface antigen loss. 2%, 2.2%, 2.9%. Aap sari zindagi, you can give them the treatment. At the end of the day, the surface antigen loss is less than 5% with those who are E antigen positive and E antigen negative. Isse bhi bura haal hai. That's a positive negativity rate of surface antigen is maximum is 0.6%, less than 1%. HBV cure. a goal for the next decades to be seen. And as you see, that as I say that we cannot cure it today, people like ourselves and many more across the globe are working on combination of treatments to achieve the success, which means the antivirals, which we have, the nukes, the capsid antagonist, and the small RNA engine, they are coming in fact, through research, not yet commercially available, but coming in. The immune restoration with the TLR agonist and the therapeutic vaccine. There is a preventive vaccine, and then therapeutic vaccines are also tried, in fact, by some of our colleagues in Bangladesh and Japan and other countries. So they are showing better trends. So hopefully, as we go along in the years to come, as I stand, or my colleagues would stand in the next 10 years on this platform, we can cure hepatitis C, and that would be the news, in fact, of this century. The liver cccDNA, as you see, it starts on the left, and with the combinations, it shows a decline and hopefully zero. So that is the need of the hour, and that is what is the most important message that is coming in for elimination of B. Prevention through vaccination. No cure, but prevention through vaccination. So vaccines are available. We know that. They are extremely, extremely safe. 60.1% decrease in incidence of liver cancer, 76.3% decrease in mortality from fulminant hepatic failure, 92% decrease in mortality from chronic liver disease over decades since vaccine got introduced in Taiwan. Everyone would quote this Taiwanese experience because that country had a huge incidence of all these things, and through vaccination, look at the excellent, excellent results that they have gotten it. Cost effective, particularly as part of triple elimination strategy to eliminate mother-to-child transmission of HIV, hepatitis B, and syphilis. So WHO has been after all the countries in the world, in fact, who are signatories that they must implement the hepatitis vaccination program in their APIs, and we are part of that too. But we are not part of this thing, most unfortunately, and that is still lagging, and that is the birth dose of hepatitis B vaccine within the first 24 hours. So this is an extraordinary attempt, a very sensitive, very safe attempt, and it should be promoted. My colleagues sitting here, in fact, in the room, without your help, this cannot be achieved through gastroenterologists and hepatologists asking for it, because birth dose vaccination is the safest way where you can prevent hepatitis B in fact. And then, of course, as we go along in the next 10, 20 years, we will see what it is gone, because in fact that population would not have it, or at least a sizable population would not have hepatitis B anymore. So this, if administration within 24 hours is not feasible for whatever reasons, a late birth dose has some effectiveness. Although effectiveness declines progressively in the days after birth, after 7 days, a late birth dose can still be effective in preventing horizontal transmission and therefore remains beneficial. WHO recommends that all infants receive the late birth dose during the first contact with the healthcare providers at any time up to the time of the next dose of the. This does not, the birth dose would not make it a part of the 3 injections, which is important. So this is birth dose, and then 3 injections would follow as per routine. Of course, WHO is also recommending, and this is part of the highest risk population who may be exposed, doctors, nurses, phlebotomists who can be in fact exposed with anybody's blood, they should be vaccinated, and patients on dialysis, patients who receive blood, for a variety of reasons. It is extremely safe in pregnancy. That is the question that is generally asked. And it is also safe for lactating women. A birth dose can be given to low birth weight babies and premature infants. So it's even safe for those. The birth dose should not count as part of the primary 3-dose series. The 3 doses of the standard primary series should still be given afterwards according to the national vaccination schedule. Now, we all fail if we do not have a strategy for all what I'm saying. In fact, it is just a speech or something. Somebody has to develop a plan. Somebody has to develop a plan not for the strategy, but for reporting, for monitoring. किसी भी चीज़ को आप monitor ना कीजिए, it's gone. You have to follow what was it in 2022, standing today on May the 7th, in 2024, May the 7th. So one has to see the results. Sometimes we achieve through our success, sometimes we say, no, we need to do more about it, and we have to be looking at those loopholes and tie them up. So the path towards a global elimination strategy started in 2009, but adopted in 2016, and there is a huge viral hepatitis document from WHO which will tell you all the 5 important strategies, and this is for both B and C. Information for focused action, interventions for impact, delivering for equity. Ye na ho ke, this is a better population, this is somebody highly influential, or whatever one can come out in our country, because there is so much of inequity that in fact we cannot even think about it. Equity is the need of the hour. Every human being, everyone, color, caste, religion, nothing matters. They must be equal and dealt equally so that the results are as good as we can. Then of course financing, stability is very important, and all these things are important. So when this got all implemented in 2015 or 16, look what the results were. The baseline hepatitis B vaccine globally was 82%, and by 2030, which is the target year for elimination, should be 90%. Mother to child transmission, 38%. Again, these are global figures, not for our country. 38%, it should exceed 90%. Safe injection practices, 5% globally, should reach 90% or above. Harm reduction falls into the same category. HBV treatment, less than 1%, global figures in 2015 should reach 80%, and hepatitis C treatment, which was less than 1% in 2015, should go to 80% treatment. So that is how WHO, Pakistan, and all the countries related to WHO are signatories that we would achieve the target, and my colleagues sitting here and across the country would know what figures we can relate for our own country. When we do that by 2030, and you can see that 6 to 10 million infections in 2015 would reduce to less than 1,900,000 by 2030. 104 million deaths in 2015 would be less than 500,000 deaths. So that's how both morbidity and mortality would come down if we are, in fact, hoping to achieve the target of elimination. Now, how do we do that? Word of mouth doesn't do anything. It has to be a very concrete planning. There should be a national strategy plan, including stakeholders' input, patients, and all those people who matter than the clinicians. I don't know how much the national plan, in fact, got, through all what is written here. Workforce needed to achieve elimination. What is the workforce? Where is it coming from? Budget for provision of testing and in treatment. So all these things are important, but the last one is the most important: effective surveillance and monitoring of loss to follow-up and everything else. Could be eliminated by 2030? Maybe, yes. But look at what we have faced for the last 3 years. The global, in fact, COVID pandemic has really let every country on the standstill. Of course, our country also had been affected, but luckily, in fact, we were not as badly affected by COVID when it came to morbidity and mortality, for reasons only heavens knows. But yes, we are fortunate that we did not have that kind of figures that is across the border in other countries. Due to disruptions brought by COVID-19 and giving constraints in the budgets anticipated in the face of COVID-19 response, the hepatitis elimination programs and federal and provincial levels would be effective. So this has to be addressed by all the stakeholders, in fact, especially the governments that are installed, so that they can look at it positively. I can't say for reasons that you all guys know positively, but what is harm in keeping your hopes alive? Because la taqnatu min rahmatillah is, of course, is our blessing, that we have to believe in Allah's blessings eventually. Hopefully someday they will come to us and we will be greatly benefited. So hepatitis C, I haven't been able to tell you in details because that presentation didn't open. It got detected in 1989. As I stand 2022, the major breakthrough happened in 2013 when we started to have oral medicines for hepatitis C elimination. We do not have a vaccine. We would never have a vaccine for hepatitis C. So the elimination figures of hepatitis C has come in through only treatment. So that treatment really cannot happen to anybody unless you get tested. So testing is the most important thing, the missing millions. Whenever, wherever you are practicing, it is your duty that this patient, this person, because it's a silent killer. Patient would come to you with a hepatoma, patient would come to you with vomiting of blood when he is or she is already cirrhotic. So if you do just a simple Hep C antibody testing, that comes back positive, you do the PCR and start the treatment with a very simple treatment, just 1 pill a day for 3 months, and that is it. Now this responsibility has to be shared across the board, no matter what your specialty is. This woman, this person, in fact, or this person coming to a dentist, for instance, or for that mean gynae obs and all that bit. And same is for card. Anybody coming to any clinic, if he or she is not tested for hepatitis B and C, from here onwards, this whole thing, in fact, would fall on your shoulders that this patient may or may not have the disease, but once you say that he has it, you have saved his family, you have saved himself, and you have saved many more patients who otherwise would get infected. So bear with this responsibility, get them checked, and hopefully that would pay the dividends for the entire environment and society. In Pakistan, with national commitments and dedication, we can achieve the target. With the current scenario, it is most unlikely that we would achieve the WHO target of 2030. It is down the road. This is 2022 for elimination of hepatitis. I hope I'm wrong, and by 2030 that, all the figures would tell us that yes, we are at par with the rest of the world and we have eliminated it. But let's work for it, and hopefully we can do what I'm telling you. Thank you very much.